Batman might be the most cinematic hero because, just like Batman, it takes a lot of behind-the-scenes action to make walking around dressed like a bat look cool. Batman marks both the highs and lows of superheroes on the big screen. From his solo outing in 1989 that arguably legitimized the comic book genre to Batman and Robin, which almost killed it, the stakes are so high no matter who is cast. Let's get into how director Matt Reeves and actor Robert Pattinson made their Batman stand out. Every now and then, a trailer editor will slide in a song to hint at a movie's feel or look, or it's just something the editor loves. Inevitably, that song gets tied to the movie in your head, but then you go and see it, and the song is nowhere to be seen, mostly because the scene wasn't even ready by the time the trailer was made. That definitely is not the case with The Batman, whose advertising has featured Nirvana's Something in the Way extensively. That's no random choice. The grunge ballad creates the sonic bedding for the entire movie. Even Batman's largely two-note theme seems to echo the song's guitar line, but it doesn't stop there. When Reeves and Pattinson were envisioning their Batman, they focused on his early career. Part of that delineation meant that Bruce was not able to separate his Bat self from his Bruce self as well as it usually is depicted. Reeves used the mood of the song to dictate the Batman Bruce personality, and he looked at Gus Van Sant's Last Days about the last days of Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain as a model for a broken Bruce Wayne wandering around a decaying mansion.
I wanted to go like really Kurt Cobain.
While films of the 30s and 40s are what the writers of Cahiers du Cinema define as film noir, the genre had a renaissance in the 70s. It's these 70s noir movies that Reeves took inspiration from for his Gotham. The relationship between Selina and Batman are borrowed from the movie Clute, where a private detective and a prostitute have to solve a murder case. Like bats and cats, that relationship starts out judgmental before becoming more respectful and then intimate. Reeves also watched and then rewatched all of The President's Men about the Watergate investigation. And as a nod to that, the two politicians caught up in the Riddler schemes, District Attorney Gil Colson and Mayor Don Mitchell, both get their names from real-life figures in the Watergate scandal. Nixon advisor Chuck Colson was the first one arrested in relation to Watergate, and then campaign manager John Mitchell. The role of Batman attracts big-name talent, part of what fuels the inevitable Change.org campaign to have them reconsidered. Before being big talents, though, they still have to audition for the high-stakes role, which includes how they look and perform wearing the cowl. There's a thin line between looking like Vengeance and the Knight, and looking kinda silly dressed like a bat, with cowl ears and a cape after all. The hitch, however, is that they had not actually made a Batsuit by the time casting happened because it was to be crafted to the actor who was cast. Fortunately, there has already been a whole heaping of Batman movies with plenty of leftover costumes ready for the actor to try on. So, when it came time for Pattinson to audition for the Cape to Crusader, he did it in Val Kilmer's suit, though he misidentified it in a video interview as Clooney's. It was Kilmer's. There was not a bat nipple in sight. The old suit was so hot to wear that Pattinson's sweat started to reshape the cowl. On top of that, the suit was too small for him. Regardless, he clearly passed the audition. This is the order of events after finding out there's a new Batman movie on the horizon. First, find out who Batman is and then complain that whoever it is will be completely wrong for the part. And then, find out what the Batmobile's gonna look like. The Batmobile has evolved over time from a nondescript red roadster. The George Barris Batmobile, derived from the Ford Futura concept car for the 1966 Batman, set the bar for cool bat rides. Burton's Batmobile was a slick custom machine. While Nolan and Snyder would both go for a more paramilitary look, Reeves was leaning into the homemade nature of Batman with his suit and Batmobile, looking like Wayne took apart some old muscle cars and then installed his special engines. Putting that turbo right behind his head means that he's pretty confident he's worked out turbo blowback. Reeves wanted the car itself to be as intimidating as the guy who built it, telling Empire, quote, "It has to make an appearance out of the shadows to intimidate, so I thought of it almost like Stephen King's processed motor Christine. I liked the idea of the car itself as a horror figure, making an animalistic appearance to really scare the hell out of the people Batman's pursuing. There is absolutely a horror genre aspect to this movie," end quote. Considering the work that Wayne would have had to put into that car, it makes more sense that he instigated that car chase. He could have kept fighting Penguin and his men. The Penguin has gone through a lot of iconic looks. Meredith Burgess's campy performance with a monocle top hat and a cigarette holder has set the standard, while Danny DeVito's Penguin added a more disgusting element to his look. He's also evolved from a snickering caricature who commits penguin-themed crimes to a more underworld fixture, filling the void left after the collapse of Gotham's more traditional mob families, the Maronis and the Falcones. After complications from a previous weight gain to play the character, Colin Farrell opted for prosthetics. Designer Mike Marino had sculpted the look for the Penguin, who in the movie has not reached his full villainous potential himself, still acting as a lackey for Falcone. They wanted Farrell to be unrecognizable underneath the prosthetics, but still have enough of his face that they could read the actor's expressions. To test if they had achieved their goal, a team of 10 to 15 people took the 6 hours to apply the prosthetics and then took a stroll to the Burbank Starbucks. While he got a few looks, no one seemed to recognize him or think anything was afoot. Farrell fought for at least a cigar for the character in lieu of his signature cigarette holder, but the studio stood firm on their no tobacco policy. Sliding just above the Batmobile in the don't screw this up concerns for a Batmobile adaptation is getting Batman's signature foe right, the Joker. Even when the Joker is not there, fans want to know that you have a good plan for the Joker eventually. In a world where it's hard to keep a secret, they almost got away with casting the Joker without anyone knowing by announcing that Joker actor Barry Keoghan was playing comic book character Stanley Merkel of the Gotham Police Department. But then, his brother ruined the surprise by posting on social media that his brother was the Joker. That seems like a lot for a character that appears behind a small dirty window, but on the editing room floor, there's a lot more. The original cut of the movie came in at a Snyder-esque 4 hours and included a scene where Batman sought advice from a captured serial killer who hadn't yet become the Joker residing at Arkham. This Joker was inspired by the original Joker inspiration, the 1928 film The Man Who Laughs. For Reeves's Batverse, this Joker grew up with a defect that forced a smile on his face, meaning that he grew up thinking of the world as a cruel joke. Reeves fully intends to have us see that scene, likely around the home release of the movie.
Life has been a cruel joke on him, and this is his response, and he's eventually going to declare himself as a clown, declare himself as the Joker.
The Batsuit in the movie adaptations has been a bit of a challenge. It has to be cool, but it also has to be something the actor can move around in. Generally speaking, the former has taken precedence over the latter. This has led to Batmen who couldn't turn their heads or needed special cowls for Batmobile shots because the points were too high to close the top. Just like the Batmobile though, this Batsuit was meant to look like it was homemade, with inspiration coming from Vietnam-era military gear, but Pattinson's biggest request was that he was able to move around in it. The crew was so successful that Pattinson did actual somersaults in the suit, which he said would end up backfiring as more acrobatics were then incorporated into the action sequences. The Riddler has been a bit of a tricky Bat villain. At times, he can just be a more specifically themed Joker with a green suit and question mark motif. The other problem is his riddles haven't really been all that complex. Drawing inspiration from all the President's Men and Batman stories like The Long Halloween, this Riddler had a more focused goal of partnering with Batman to expose the corruption of Gotham. To give this Riddler a more serial killer feel, Dono and Reeves went to books like Manhunter and real-life figures like the Zodiac Killer, who also wore a mask and a symbol on his chest like a supervillain. Dono even came up with the idea of wrapping himself in plastic wrap, figuring that someone so meticulous might do that to avoid leaving DNA evidence behind. He regretted that though after an hour of filming, where he turned beet red from the heat. The Batman was originally slated for a June premiere of 2021, but there was a certain global pandemic that prevented people from gathering in large groups to watch movies. The Batman was a third of the way through filming in England before filming had to stop. Once protocols were put in place, The Batman was one of the first big productions to get back underway, but with changes. That meant that sometimes, if the shot was static, there would not even be a camera operator present. Instead, get this, the camera would be operated remotely with the actors alone on set. With most of the scenes shot at night and the cowl limiting his peripheral vision, Pattinson said that it was hard at times to tell if there was anyone there at all, commenting that it took a lot of getting used to. Hey, did you know that directors have a vision? Yeah, it's one of the most cliched things said about directors when trying to promote an upcoming project. There's a lot of talk about the vision of the director and how they went about achieving it, mostly because it's hard to articulate what a director does. So it's no surprise that Reeves had a very specific vision for the movie. His method of getting that was through perseverance. Catwoman actor Zoe Kravitz mentioned a scene where she storms out of the Iceberg Club, and Reeves's notes were so specific that he had her keep her mouth shut to help convey her anger. This was not a problem for Paul Dano. Reeves told The Hollywood Reporter that for the video call between the Riddler and Batman, Dano came with a lot of options on his own, with the day ending with 200 takes of the scene to choose from. Reeves would show the actors their performances on monitor to help them see what he was seeing when he asked for these small adjustments. It was also Reeves's conviction about telling a Batman story early on in his Bat career that he was able to convince Warner Brothers to move his Batman to Earth 2. For what that will mean for the DCEU, oh man, we'll have to wait until the Flash movie that promises to be crawling with Batman. Gotham was a wet city even before the seawalls came down. That movie had more rain in it than California will have all year. With that much downfall in Gotham, you would think that Batman would team up with Aquaman more often.